What is going on, YouTube? Taylor here from OA Cheddar. Thank you for checking out this exclusive interview that we did with Dylan Carter, the COO of Aura Repricer. If you guys are in the market for a repricer, maybe you don't have one yet, or maybe you do have one, but you've never really thought about whether or not that repricer is doing a good job for you, you're going to love this interview. Dylan and I sit down and we talk about the newest version of Aura that they've just released. This is Aura 1, where they actually from the ground up rebuilt the entire platform and took what they learned over these last years and implemented not only some changes and some improvements, but also some very powerful features that they have brought out with this new version that if you are selling on Amazon, you need to check out if you want to maximize your profit with every item that you have. So if you want to learn more about Aura, the links are in the description below. Other than that, enjoy the interview. All right. So we're live. Awesome. Thank you, Dylan, for joining me today as we talk about your repricer and the launch of Aura. And Aura 1 is the name of the new program, correct?
Yeah, so Aura 1.0. So it's a slight tongue-in-cheek, but it's accurate. So if you look in Legacy Aura, as we now call it, the version on the bottom left is 0.9, right? So really to us, Legacy Aura was a beta this whole time. I know it sounds kind of weird, but that's what happens when things grow very, very fast and you're a bootstrap company. Good problems to have. And so we sat down to really think about the next 5-10 years of the product, the company. And when we started looking at prioritizing features and fixes and all that stuff, all the feedback we've gotten over the years from our users, we're like, man, yeah, like, can the current system really handle that and a lot more? And more importantly, if we were to build Aura today, knowing what we know, would it be the same thing? The clear answer was no. So we're like, great. It's going to take more time, but sometimes you need to do that, right? It's more of a strategic decision. And so we spent the last 18 plus months essentially, and we have rewritten every line of code. I mean, we migrated to a completely different language. So it is fundamentally a new platform now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I can totally relate to what it's like to, have a program that grows quickly and you kind of look at it and go, can this be better? Yes, it can. So I commend the fact that you guys, even looked at your product and went, this is working, because you guys have a user base, have been with you for quite some time. You've been on the market for a while. But you guys looked at it and you went, we could continue just running the way things are, or we can make improvements on this and make something better. And I think that's really important, not only in software, but just in business as a whole. And Amazon sellers, they talk about this too. Repricing is like very basic. Like, oh, every repricer is the same. But really, I don't. That's not true. Can you speak into that a little bit more? Like what is the different types of repricing?
Yeah. I'd like to get meta with this question a little bit as well. If it comes down to, okay, let's just say everybody does rule-based repricing. Is everybody the same in repricing? Yes and no, because it depends on what you're able to create with your rule-based, right? Rule-based here versus rule-based there isn't exactly the same thing. It depends on what kind of variables they're allowing you to factor in, what kind of scenarios you can factor in. So rule-based to rule-based is not one-to-one. It can vary dramatically, but that's not all repricing tools do, right? There's far more feature sets inside of that, outside of just we updated your price and how we did it, right? You start to get into supportive features like, a good example here is like we came out with workflows. Why? Because we like tools like Zapier. We like creating automations. And we're like, man, there's this management task that users have to do. They have to be able to log into their account, set the correct strategy, enable repricing, and move on. Well, what if you didn't have to? Is that really a huge value add to the user? Not really. Great. Let's free up that time. We can essentially have one setting, one feature that removes all that time. So we just saved users, let's call it 5 hours a week, outside of thousands upon thousands of users. We just freed up quite a lot of time in the world. That's kind of a good thing. But also you get down, and what I mean by getting meta on this is you get to the company too. Who's the team behind it, right? As well as I do, I've been a seller. Support tends to not be great in the Amazon software space, right? And so for us, the way we've designed everything, I mean, we have very clear, we have 2 KPIs we measure every single week to measure not only speed, but quality of responses as well, given to us as feedback from our users. We automate 60 to 80% of our inbound requests, because most of those are pretty straightforward. Hey, how does this work? I can serve you up an article, a direct answer of it works like this. Great, we can move on. You don't need to wait for a human, right? It's not really worth a human jumping in to answer that if it's a pretty clear answer. But there are scenarios where you need to jump in and say, here's an ASIN, here's a SKU. It just feels funny. That's all you got. And we're great. I'll go tell you why you think it feels funny and if that's good or if that's bad. And if it is bad, let's go fix it. And here's how to do it. So we try to be very educational, right? Here's what's interesting is what repricing is not simple. Like it's simple to understand, right? I can explain it to you in a few sentences, but the important part here is it is complex because you are creating your own strategies. And by the way, strategies are just algorithms. We just use the word strategy because most people hear algorithm and go, that sounds dorky. I agree, but it's the same thing. And so it is up to the user a lot of times, and this is starting to change, and we could talk about these changes with like Maven and stuff, where the user has to create those strategies. And I have been a newer seller jumping into a repricing tool saying, what the heck do I do? I don't know. And having to go to Facebook groups and be like, what do I do? That doesn't really work, right? I don't even know if the person who's giving me the answer is doing good, right? The people who should be giving me the answer are the people with the most data, which is the company. And so for us, we want to be educated. So we will say, hey, you answered or you asked this question, but this question really assumes that this next thing beneath it was true, and that's actually false. So I'm not going to answer up here. Let me correct you down here, because now that one correction down here actually answers 15 different questions you're about to have. So being able to be consultative and supportive in a way that actually makes sense. Like, let's just have a conversation and say, hey, what do you think's happening? Is that good? Is that bad? Actually, it's good, and here's why, although it could be counterintuitive. So is a repricing tool a repricing tool a repricing tool? No, fundamentally not. Not even factoring in, again, the feature sets and stuff like that. So it is hard to say that, a repricing tool is a repricing tool.
Right. Well, and when we first started into Amazon, repricing tools were extremely basic. And what you said kind of just struck a nerve of like, if you're a newer seller and you're going down, you're sitting down, you're trying to set up a repricer, you don't know how to set that up properly. And going to Facebook and going to groups and things like that and asking that question, like, you might get a nice person who actually gives you a genuine answer. You might get a jerk who's going to turn around and make a joke at your expense. And it's like, none of that's nice and fun. And I love that you say that, it really should come from the company who specializes in that data and understands that data more. And so that kind of touches in on one of your new features, which is your AI optimized strategies. Can you talk to me more about how that works? The name of it is it starts with an M, and I'm drawing a blank on it right now. But
Maven.
Maven. Thank you.
So this is super interesting. Everybody at the company is a dork in some way, shape, or form, and we love that because we're always looking at things that we're curious about or interested in. And I'm definitely that dork where I geek out about automation. I geek out about technology, like robotics, AI now, because that's now becoming more accessible. But at the same time, there are times when terms are used a little too loosely and incorrectly. And AI across industries, by the way, this is happening. There's an occurrence of saying it's AI enabled. And then that's the end of the discussion. But I don't know if that's better. Like, tell me why that's better. And by the way, AI is such a broad term. Are we talking deep learning, machine learning, reinforcement learning? That's just like a few out of like dozens upon dozens of variations of things that still qualify as artificial intelligence. So we took a step back when we started to work on this and said, okay, again, what is the next 5 to 10 years? And how do, honestly, what's the problem? Right? You don't start with a solution. You start with a clear problem. So the reality of it is Amazon is changing, and it always has been, right? And it will always continue to. It's just a maturing industry. But you have two interesting things that are happening. One, more complexity and more speed. Complexity is the difficult one, actually, because if you asked me a year ago, and there's plenty of podcasts where this question came up, hey, what's a good starting strategy? I had a pretty good answer. It's called the oscillation strategy. Worked like 80% of the time. It was a good thing to say, hey, start here, get up and running. Let's cover 80% of your SKUs, and then let's handle the exceptions, the other 10 to 20% as they come up, because those are different situations. When you ask me that now, my actual answer is, how many SKUs do you have? Because every single one of your SKUs should have an optimized strategy for it alone, and it should change hour by hour. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't do it.
No.
Right? Okay,
Yeah.
so how do we solve that problem? Well, we need to factor in more variables, more attributes. We need to be able to understand what is true on a SKU, and we need to understand behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So AI does make sense in this world, but only in certain ways. Like machine learning, I don't really think makes a lot of sense here, because if you're doing private label repricing, I think that totally makes sense, because you're saying, hey, predict a price to go directly here, and then we're good. But in a competitive world, right? Like private label pricing is really about economic optimization. It's less about competitive nature, if that makes sense. Whereas resale repricing, so OA, RA, wholesale,
Mm-hmm.
we got 50 people on a SKU. We're playing a game.
Right.
So the way so certain models actually make a ton of sense here, and other models really, I don't think, add any additional value. And so we said, okay, well, how do we find out what's true? Like, where's the intelligence part of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maven will actually run its own experiments. It will understand how every single one of your competitors behave, right?
Okay.
Once we know that, depending on not only the variables of the listing, but who we're competing with and when, the behaviors we decide to take change itself.
Right.
Now, also if you're one competitor, right, your behavior changes over time too. Because when you first come in stock, you're pretty conservative, right?
Right.
But as you start to hold that inventory, you go, I want to move it. Let's become more aggressive. So we will intentionally forget that knowledge and have to relearn it, so that we're making sure we're being as optimal as real time as possible. Now, a few things happen though. When you start talking about a model, models are designed and should be fine-tuned for a specific outcome. If you look at something like ChatGPT, right? It's a large language model. That's text generation, also image generation, and now to a certain extent, video generation. We're not using that. That doesn't make sense here. But I bring it up because what it's doing at a deep level is it is predicting the next token or the next character.
Right.
At a deep level, that's what it's doing. It's fine-tuned for that. So Maven is fine-tuned for one very specific outcome. We call it an optimal price. Now, this is a balanced approach. We chose Maven, by the way. We actually used AI to help name it because we wanted a balanced name that sounded kind of like not aggressive, not conservative. Maven came over. Like, we kind of like that. And so Maven is designed to find a balance between sales velocity and profitability. Balanced approach, right? We're trying to find that option. And that changes moment by moment, by the way. A toy, the optimal price for a toy in Q1 is very different than that same toy in Q4. So it should be able to be dynamic and fluctuate. And so that optimal price helps give us a target to aim for and say, we want not only us, but the buy box with us in it at that price. And most of the time, the optimal price is typically slightly above our current price, which makes sense. You have a lot of aggressive pressure to be more in the buy box, which is going to compress the price, right? So, okay, if we have a memory of all your competitors, we have a target, we can now say, well, based on the techniques we have at our disposal, what do we need to do given the current listing attributes, the variables of the listing, what we've seen work before and what we've seen not work before? Who are we competing against? What do we do to get our price and the buy box price higher? That's what we're going to do. And so complexity is what Maven is designed to solve. Because now you don't need to say, well, you know what? I went from having 100 SKUs to having 10,000 SKUs. Therefore, I need to go from having one strategy to 15 strategies. No, you don't.
Right.
You don't. And what's nice is even as the market fluctuates, right? We just went through Prime Day.
Yeah.
We have a demo account so we can run some crazy tests. And like if everything blows up, we don't care. And that whole account is using Maven. And what's fun is we set the min price to be automatically set to 0% ROI, so break even. We give it a full spectrum. Prime Day came, we changed nothing. Maven rose with it, adjusted everything it needed to in real time.
Wow.
We did nothing. So imagine going from Q1 to Q4. You don't have to say, well, hey, what changes are you making for your strategy going into Q4? Nothing. It's doing it for me. That's the whole point. The whole point of technology is leverage, right? And so our goal is to say, how do we allow you to handle more complexity? And we get to speed in a moment because that's a different feature. How do we give you more leverage to handle more complexity, more craziness by doing less? So if you look at a rule-based strategy, you tend to have anywhere from 10 to 30 settings you have to get in there and design, right?
Right.
Maven
Right.
has one. Maven has one. We say, how do you want your min prices to be set? Automatically? ROI, profit margin, fixed price, manually? That's fine too. Max
Mm.
prices? Buy.
Yeah.
We still have them. We actually calculate something called an auto max because they are actually useful. We need to know what the upper bounds are. So if we notice that a buy box tends to get suppressed at $50, great. We know that. We'll factor that in. So let's not suppress it again.
That's awesome.
So right. So like, and I've always said, min prices are very unique to the seller based on your cost, but max prices have nothing to do with you. They have everything to do with the economics of each individual SKU.
Right.
Now we're just taking full advantage of that.
That makes so much sense. And especially right now in this season, like with Q4, happening now, but really like the big push being the end of November and beginning of December, we've trained folks in our Cheddar Black group in the past, like you need to be watching your repricer and knowing your inventory and constantly making adjustments, because you don't want to be the seller who has, maybe you have the hot selling toy item and you're holding on to it. And next thing you know, price skyrockets, demand shoots down, and you sell yours at a price that you're happy with, but it could have been a whole lot better. Right. Yeah. And so what you're saying is with your tool, it's going to be able to understand your competition, understand the seasons, and optimally price out your inventory for you. So you don't have to spend hours sitting there obsessing over, whether or not your minimum and maximum price are set correctly, or you're going to sell something too quickly. Cause man, I'll tell you, like, those days it was a full-time job for like 2 weeks straight. I remember Grant would just be sitting there constantly looking, and he'd be pulling levers when he wanted to pull levers. Which, it worked out fine, but it took all of his attention for those days. And now we're all kind of, we've been practicing, we call it video game mode, which is just very lazy. It works. It could be better, but we're saving the time type pricing. And then I get frustrated because I might source something and I'm looking at something and going, I'm buying this in the spring, but in the summer it's going to be really nice. Right. Or I'm buying this now and I know it's going to sell, the rebound's going to happen. The price is going to shoot up. Like there's an opportunity here. And then just to see on my orders, oh crap, we sold that for a low price. We made $2. I could have made 20, but I made $2 on that item, and we sold 5 of them within an hour, and now we're sold out. Nothing.
So we try to take a balanced approach there. So we don't look at seasonality from that perspective. But what we look at is changes while it's active. So what's nice is, old Aura couldn't reprice unless there was competition. It couldn't do anything. Now that's complete. Like we completely re-architected everything. There's like the replay system. So like that speeds everything up. We have auto refresh pages. So like data just auto refreshes every 5 seconds. You don't press a refresh button anymore. It's just as real time, as watching a stock ticker, right?
Oh, that's cool.
Because again, speed, right? Like if you're making a decision based on data that's 10 minutes old, that's an outdated decision, in my opinion. It should be as real time as is really not even humanly possible. That's too slow, as API possible, as tech possible. But what we do is we look at things like, okay, is the BSR changing? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, we set the optimal price at, let's say, $45. And let's say we raised it up, right? Because sales were actually moving pretty fast. So we do that. Okay, maybe we got a few sales a little bit higher. Awesome. We protected some profit. We actually raised profitability. But we noticed that there was a massive hit on the BSR in a negative way. We need to adjust for that. Right. So we're running this auto balancing in real time to understand, like, based on what we did, the second order of that, was that good or bad?
Right.
And that's why it's so important to have not only the optimal price, but also the auto max price fluctuate every single time there's a price change. We recalculate it. We say, is that still true? Right. Because maybe it's not. I mean, what's so crazy is people don't understand how fast things move. When you're looking at it from a seller's perspective, it doesn't seem that fast. When you're looking at it from our perspective, looking at the API calls and all that stuff, I mean, you're talking every single second.
Right.
Things are changing. Like there's a lot of times where you might be looking at your SKUs and be like, oh, it hasn't updated, but 2 times in the last 5 minutes. Actually, it updated 300 times, but it updated so fast that the front end actually didn't even reflect all the changes because it wouldn't make sense. Or because the page caches every 5 to 15 minutes. Right. So things move really, really fast, and people don't really understand why that's important. And it's important because although when we land on a listing page, it's going to be cached for 15 minutes, right? So we're not seeing it as fresh data as possible, but the consumer is landing there for the first time most of the time. So
Right.
it's not cached.
Right.
So that 120th update they saw, and that's the price they got, and that's what they purchased. And so it
Right.
did
Right.
matter.
Yeah.
Right. So that speed is absolutely paramount. So the world we're seeing, when we're thinking about where's the world in Amazon going, it's more leverage and it's more technical leverage, right? What we tend to see is human leverage, right? We're using virtual
Mhm.
assistants, stuff like that. I had a tweet about this the other day. I think this will take time, but my prediction is that we'll transition away from virtual assistants and more towards digital assistants, right? Looking at things like agents, AI agents, stuff like that. I
Right.
ran a pilot hacking something together to see if I could actually have it source OA for me.
Mhm.
Was not great and was not designed to do it, but off the shelf tools, I was able to find one.
Yeah.
And that was good enough for me to be like, all right, it's physically possible. Now imagine if you design a model to do it. And so e-commerce as a whole is going deeper into AI, which actually makes a lot of sense, right? We're drowning in data. Things move very quickly and things are becoming highly complex. And so
Yeah.
that's where we're seeing the world go.
No, I totally agree with you on that. I totally do. I see it happening. And as I'm learning, things with Cheddar Soft and what data can do and the amount of data that you get, I definitely agree that I think we're right around that corner coming in soon. But we were talking about speed earlier, and we talked about the complexities with repricing your inventory. But speed was another factor of it, and that's another part of your new program. You guys call it Hyperdrive. Which I think is a really cool tool. Can you give us an explanation of what Hyperdrive is and how it's going to help users?
I have to break a few constructs here, which I'll explain what that means in a moment. Instant repricing means something not immediate, and I'll explain that in a second. But let me preface with this: if a repricing tool slows you down, if they have anything less than instant, it's not a technical limitation. They are penalizing you because you're not paying enough. That's all that is. So it's a product decision. Okay, so if you can only reprice once every 15 minutes, it's not because the company is not capable of it. They're saying you're not paying us enough to earn the right to do instant repricing. So let's be honest. If you're not doing instant repricing, I don't see the point. The world, that's just what it takes, right? Because again, if you can only do it once every 15 minutes and I can do it, what instant repricing actually means is 1.5 to 2 minutes round trip. I'm destroying you time and time again. So you're just going to see abysmal buy box ownership percentage just based on like limitations and speed. So instant repricing, what does that mean? It means that the company is receiving a price change notification, doing its update and sending it back immediately. We're not slowing you down. No delay. However, the time it takes to go from we submitted it to Amazon via the API, round trip, Amazon confirm that it's updated and it's good, tends to take anywhere from 1.5 to 2 minutes on average. So instant repricing actually means 1.5 to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So I mentioned we were re-architecting everything. And what that means in a non-nerdy way is how we model even what is a price, what is repricing. You don't just say, here's repricing. You have to actually define what that is at a very deep level, right? How do certain systems work and how do certain systems interrelate to one another, right? These are important things. And so we were in the middle of doing this when the MWS deprecation came out. So in the MWS API is what people used to use as developers. That got deprecated, meaning they said data will stop flowing on this date. You have to upgrade everything to the SP API, which is the new version. So what developers tend to do, because a lot of them like to be efficiently lazy, and I mean that in a positive way, obviously. What you do is you don't say, great, well, what are the new things we could do here? You go, crap, data's going to stop flowing. So let me go, this endpoint for MWS is this other one for SP API. So let me just swap them out. That's what you do. Well, we were already re-architecting everything. So we did pause and say, what can we do? Right? We're already in the weeds here anyway. So like, if competition has to re-architect to make this happen and we're already in the middle of it, well, that's kind of a good situation. And so we found a way for up to 50 SKUs. This is the technical limit on our end. We can do that full round trip, not in 1.5 to 2 minutes. We can do it in less than 10 seconds.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I don't have a term for that's better than instant.
Ultra instant.
We just call it Hyperdrive.
Hyperdrive. Perfect name. Yes.
Yeah. And so what's crazy is like Maven utilizes Hyperdrive in a very strategic way, but it's awesome because now you can go into your SKUs and say, these are the 50 that are just really competitive. They need that speed.
Right.
And so what's nice is there are cases where, again, if you're utilizing Hyperdrive and there's that much demand and competition and updates, if you're going up against somebody not using Hyperdrive, you can reprice theoretically 12 times in the time it takes them to do one.
Right.
That doesn't matter if it's one-on-one, but it very much matters when there's 15 of us and we're all updating at different timescales. So in a lot of cases, we've updated 4 times and kept up with the market, if not pulled it. And the person who went to go update with us at time 0 back here reflects that old data way up here. And you're like, man, you're already out of date, right? By the time you even got it submitted, you were out of date. So that's been huge. I think that plus Maven is honestly such a major change. And even at a deeper level, in old Aura, the way we built software 7 years ago, so different, right? So we had a design decision in our architecture that basically stated, if you made a listing or a strategy change, we would reflect that on the next organic price change. Well, back then, that speed was actually totally fine because that'd take on average 15 minutes. Right. Which nowadays you're like, what? Forever. Back then, 7 years ago, that was fine. Things didn't move that fast. That was actually pretty great. But on the high end, it could be three hours, right? So you got a high end 3 hours, average 15 minutes. Today, that's not nearly good enough. It needs to be instant. And so by re-architecting everything, we changed that. So now every single listing has something we call listing memory. So we store the most recent offer change information, the whole thing, whether we're repricing or not. And so what's nice is in old Aura, if you change, let's say all your SKUs are using strategy A, and you're automatically setting your min prices at 15% ROI. Now SKU 4, you go, you know what, that's too low. Let me go to 30, hit save. Nothing's happening. Not in old Aura. It's going to take you 15 minutes on average, up to 3 hours for that to reflect.
Right.
New Aura, we don't have to wait on the data. We already have it. So you make that change, guess what happened? They updated now. And if they're using Hyperdrive, by the time you even click out of that setting change and go to the SKU, it's already updated. The price is already changed.
That's
not
fantastic.
Only the minimum, but the price. Right. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. I mean, and it's such a competitive edge too. I mean, I'm just thinking of it on the simple terms. Like if I'm priced at $1, my competition comes in at 99 cents. And then it takes me 15 minutes, on average or best to match that 99. But in that 15 seconds or 15 minutes, there was another seller who dropped it to 98 or 97. And next thing you know, I'm at 99 and the real time price, is sitting at 95 cents, and that can just, so having that competitive edge, would be huge, especially on those competitive listings. I can see that'd be amazing for wholesale too. When you're talking about micro differences in price and things like that.
So the importance here is like we've always had instant repricing, right? That's just bare bones for us. But old Aura, I call it a goldfish because we would receive a price change, respond to it instantly, forget it ever happened.
Right.
So it was very reactive to organic price changes. That was a requirement for us to reflect any changes you had. New Aura, we said, no, what is the modern version of software? Well, it's as up to date as possible, right? So we have Hyperdrive, we have pages that auto refresh. So you do nothing, you just look at it, it will refresh in real time. You know exactly what's true right now, and is very responsive to you as a user. If you say, you know what, I've decided I don't want to use strategy A, I want to use strategy B. Great, change that, click save. You know what just happened? We replayed the last offer change information we have using the new strategy. So it wasn't, hey, in the next 15-ish minutes, it'll reflect. No. Now, right now. And by the way, if you have auto refresh on, and if you're using Hyperdrive, that change, that replay that just occurred, took anywhere from 1 page refresh, because that page data is updating every 5 seconds, either 1 or 2, right? It either happened on the next 5 seconds or in the next 10 seconds. So you're not teeing things up. You're making actual changes and you're watching them be reflected immediately.
And I'm sure that's a great feeling too. When you see that actually happen, you see the change and you're like, okay, cool. Because I've been there. I know everyone watching this has been there where they make a change. They go, okay, when is it going to change?
I do now?
Oh crap, I just sold another one. Okay, when is it going to change? Oh crap, I just sold 2 more. And like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, so that's a good example, right? Like, you're raising your min prices as an example, right? Well, if it takes 15 minutes, like you said, you could be in the buy box at 20%, but you wanted it to go from 15 to 30%. Well,
Right.
now you're still getting sales.
Yep.
Right. So that's not good. You want to say, when I decide something should be different, it should be different.
Right.
And now that's the case.
Right. And then talking about that too, and like when do you make those decisions? Something that I'm really glad that you guys put the effort into building out too.
Hmm.
And that's going to be mobile support. So,
Yeah.
in repricers that we've used in the past too, like when you see something selling or you realize like, oh, hey, I need to address this with my repricer,
Yeah.
and you're out in the go, you're logging into Safari or Chrome, you're searching it up, you're scrolling, zooming in and out, trying to navigate around. It's choppy.
Yep.
But you guys actually rebuilt when you in your rebuild, you're fully supported for mobile. So is that an
Yeah.
app?
So it's not an app. So it's not a downloadable app. That actually takes way more work and
Yeah.
time. And so we did something kind of strategic. It's called a PWA, so a progressive web app.
Mhm.
Basically, what it means is you design for mobile first. So
Yep.
Tasso on our team, he's our product designer. He takes the page and goes, "How the heck does this work on mobile?" You get
Right.
that because that has the biggest level of limitations and constraints. Once you've solved that, then you go out to tablet, which is roughly similar to desktop, and then you go out to desktop. So
Yeah.
what's nice about that is you can actually, like Safari, I'll show you this here in a moment. You can log in on Safari and on the home
Mhm.
screen, share it, add it to home or as a bookmark, depending on if you're using Android or iOS. And what's
Mhm.
nice is when you do that, you just get, hold on, I'm trying to, right there, right? That's Aura. So it looks just
Oh,
like
nice.
a mobile app and it
Yeah.
performs just like a mobile app. So if I open it up here, so this is our live demo account. This is real data, right? So everything we can do on our desktop, we can do on our phone,
Right.
including going to support right there.
Yeah.
So everything and the way you do certain things is different on mobile because desktop doesn't always translate to mobile and vice versa, right? There are
Mhm.
certain gestures, right? Like you're not clicking, there's no hover state on mobile, so you have to be able to hit it first. And now it's
Right.
hover state, right? So all that's been thought through because I saw a picture on Twitter, a screenshot of somebody be like, "Oh, repricing while doing RA, and they're in their car on their laptop." And
Oh,
I'm like, that
no.
looks so miserable. I was like, why
No.
don't you just take your phone out and just get it
Yeah.
done?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's not a downloadable app, but it works just the same. That
Yeah.
allowed us to get this support out day zero with the new system.
Yeah, and I've done that before too. It's a super simple process to add to your home
Yeah,
screen. I like how you have your icon there too. It looks just like an app. Like
yeah,
that's
yep,
very
yep,
cool. Awesome. And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but another thing is your real time competitive offers, and I think you were
yeah,
talking about that with Hyperdrive. But so you guys are with Aura, you're able to capture real time your competitive offers. You guys keep
yeah,
a log of that, to
yeah,
where you can then make your decisions based off of that log and not necessarily
yep.
pinging the system and getting an answer back. uh yeah,
Yeah, this was interesting. I didn't think it would be as impactful as it has been, to be honest. So what we did is before we even wrote any code, we just sat down with like 300 of our users, so like a small sample of our users, and we jumped on Zoom and said, "Hey, we just want to watch you do your work. Just do
hmm
your normal stuff. Let's just see what you do." And we found a lot of people were jumping to Amazon.com, the actual listing, to look at their competition. And we're like, "Why are you doing that? What are you
right,
looking for?" Well, I wanted to know, where am I at? Where's my competition?
right,
And so we're like, "Oh, you know what? Why don't we just serve that up to you?" And those pages use auto refresh, right? So it's as up to date as 5 seconds via the API. Um,
hmm
and we're like, well, what if we designed it in such a way that visually you could just clearly see who's in the buy box if it's not you, if you are,
right,
if the order is back ordered, is it fulfilled by Amazon? Is it merchant? Like, what's the hierarchy here? Like, are you on the lower end of the market or the higher end of the market? Like, kind of basically just visually see where are you at.
yeah,
And then what we did is we said, you know what? We have seller IDs. So whenever you click one of the seller IDs for one of the competitors, we'll just take you to their storefront.
right,
That tends to be the key. When we've done a lot of like personal onboardings. I'm walking them through. It's like, oh, go ahead and click on that seller ID. They jump over. They're like, whoa. I'm like, oh, I did not expect that response. I was just like, oh, it's just helpful. No, it turns out people are using it for reverse sourcing like crazy right now.
oh,
So it's
that's
cool.
cool. I mean, that just
Yeah,
makes sense too, like to where while you're in your repricing interface, you can actually see your competition, understand
yeah,
what's going on. Because you know what, like, yes, I've been there. I do that all the time. You open up Amazon to really do the research. Um,
yep,
it's something that we're learning and that we're making changes on too. Because really,
yep,
no one wants to leave their page if they don't want to. And then
Yeah.
talking about that too, you guys actually redesigned your entire interface with this as well. And I will say, like it looks beautiful.
Thank you.
It has that beautiful, clean, minimalist. Like it's obvious what to do and where to do. It's not super full of clutter. From what I've seen, it's very slick. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day. We surveyed a lot of users before working on the new system, and for some reason, I want to just ask, what are the 3 words that come to mind when you're describing legacy Aura? And a lot of people said intuitive. I was not expecting that. And not choosing that out of the word bank, by the way, it's an empty field. Right. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why is that? And I couldn't wrap my mind around it until a few months later, once we actually got the beta out of the new system, and I realized what it was. Amazon software is typically not done very well. Yeah. And what I mean by that is it's good engineering. The data's there. The design, though, and by design, I don't just mean how it visually looks. Good design is UI, UX, meaning user interface, UI. UX is user experience. How you do certain things. What is the flow to do certain things? So we would actually design prototypes, and you could click on them. It kind of felt like, but it's really just a series of screens. But we'd give you different options, and we would jump in with the user and say, hey, go do this. And we just watch. And sometimes they get stuck. We're like, all right, that's bad design. That's bad UX, because the expectation was it was over here, but we put it down here. Let's fix that. There's a difference between having good engineering work, good data, and having good product. So we took a step back, and this is why we had an actual product designer come on our team full time. Tasso, he's been with us for years now. That's what he does. He actually does this stuff. He does user interviews and says, hey, can you do this? Oh, you got stuck there. Why is that? Why does this matter to you? The SKU page, the specific listings page, that took us 3 weeks to go back and forth on, just to have a decent baseline for what that page should be. And we're still changing some stuff here and there. Right. And so it's a lot more work, but it helps you stand out. Right. And so what a lot of tools end up doing in the Amazon space is they just throw all the data in your face.
Right. Yep.
It's actually not good. A lot of people are like, oh, I just want to see everything. No, you don't. Cognitively, I promise you don't. I love this stuff. I geek out with the brain. It is so overwhelming. And there's no hierarchy, by the way. Even in legacy Aura, right? We had blues, yellows, and greens, but there's no hierarchy. So it turns out if you have a good base color, and then you use color intentionally, you now clearly know, oh, my eye's being pulled up here. Why? Because there's a red dot there. There's no red anywhere else. That's important now. So even from that perspective, we had some people jump in, they're like, oh, I really miss a lot of the color in old Aura, but then they get used to the system. They're like, oh, I get it now. Yeah. Because now I just know where to go. Everything just feels easier. Right. So even one of the things we did is we added the product images finally. Right. And I tell people, I was like, listen, this page, the listings view, will feel easier on your brain to use. Why? It's easier for the brain to do pattern recognition on images when that's what you're searching for than it is having to intentionally read through the titles to figure out what you want. Right. It's easier. Yep. So we even think about things from that perspective. And so design is way more important than most Amazon software companies would ever think about. There are tools that you use, and if you really just love it, I promise you, take a step back and say, I bet you that was designed intentionally. And if it was, that's why you enjoy it.
Well, and I appreciate you guys took the time to do that too. It's something that, hand up, we're learning hey, we need
It's a lot.
You can throw data at a wall, and yes, it's overwhelming. And I love the fact that you guys built out your prototypes and handed it to people and did user testing, and that just shows that the level of care that's being put into your your product and into your that it really is missing. And it's something that we're working on right now. For those who are watching, I am really excited to start showing you guys some demos and some interface stuff that we're working on. But you're totally right. Too much more is not best, and it's better to have the most important stuff right there. And it just how clean it is, and it's why. It's why we, this is the most successful phone brand or brand out there, period. Heck, I just bought another computer from them because the intuitiveness and the way it works. I've never had to, sit there and watch how do I make a call or how do I send a text message on my phone.
It just makes sense
because they Apple prioritize design over a whole, it made it super important. You guys doing the same thing, I think that makes sense. I look at
and by the way, we did this for everything. We rebranded. Like we went through like months of really thinking through the brand, because everything should feel consistent. You should know when you're looking at something from our company, whether that's a blog post, a social post, a feature, does not matter. And so for us, that was kind of the goal. We set down and said, what do we want our company to feel like? And not just from when you're looking at our logo, that's very simplistic, but although that is very important in the grand scheme of things, but also the product. The product should feel a certain type of way. And so we did something called an NPS score, so Net Promoter Score. It's a good way to measure essentially how people think about your what you built. Whether it doesn't matter what it is. Whenever somebody says, "Hey, rate us at 0 out of 10," it's a Net Promoter Score, and there's a certain equation you use to know if that's good or bad. So we ran this after we had a few hundred people using the beta, because we're like, man, like, how do we do? Qualitatively sounds good, but let's get some hard data. Right? Let's make people say yes or no, kind of a thing. So anything greater than 0, that's good. If the score is 20 higher, that's actually pretty good. 30 to 40, all right. 50 is pretty awesome, actually. So last time I looked at this, the survey, we were at like 52.
Oh, wow.
Legacy Aura was very different. And so this just goes to show, though, like, it took us longer to get here, to get this released, but this is why. It's because we really looked deeply into everything we did. Even the SKU page, the specific listings pages, is designed in a certain way because we're actually giving you so much more data, more information, but not overloading you. We say, hey, above the fold. So when you land on a page before you scroll, that's called above the fold. That page should tell you a certain amount of information that is priority. And okay, now you want to go deeper? Perfect. Scroll down. So the more action you take, the deeper into your analysis you're going. And then we said, well, if we put everything on the page, that's too much. You don't care about everything all the time. So even like the all offers, it's not just sitting there. Actually, if you click on the buy box value, it pops up, because you don't always need to see it, but sometimes you do. And so it should be one click away to get there. But it shouldn't. We shouldn't be giving you data that you don't care about right now, right? So even that page is designed to go from top to bottom. And by the way, the settings pane where you take your actions scroll with you. Why is that? It's because what you're doing is you're coming here to say, either one, I have a question I'm trying to answer, or two, I'm just curious and I'm checking in. So you're coming here to analyze information, make a decision, and then take action on that. So how do we take those three things and make it as seamless as possible? Reduce the friction of you doing that. Because if we can do that, and you're going to look at 100 SKUs a day, imagine how much that time adds up for you.
Right. Yeah. That just makes sense. I want to touch on one last thing too, because I know we're getting closer to our time. But with you guys in the end, you guys made a bunch of improvements to your system, which I think is fantastic. I mean, if you're going to be doing a redesign, going back in and making improvements, on the new design just makes sense. Would you mind maybe sharing with me some of your favorite improvements that you guys have, redone?
Yeah, it's a long list, which is crazy, right? So, I mean, definitely Maven and Hyperdrive. I feel like those two things are fundamentally going to change how we think about price optimization and repricing in the Amazon reseller world. But there's like smaller stuff that just add up, right? So, like the replay system, we mentioned that alone just makes it feel amazing. The auto refresh, so 4 pages have that. The data just happens in real time, so you can use the dashboard like a natural dashboard. And so I think that's critical, but there's also smaller stuff, like, handling reduced profit ranges. So now we do that even when we're automatically calculating your mins and your maxes for using like ROI, or it just knows, okay, well, if I price you at 15, that's worse than going to $14.99. So just go to $14.99. So like, we'll handle that. We're also going from supporting just North America, so 3 marketplaces, to all 20 globally. So currency conversions in there now, which is awesome. So we're opening up our doors. We had people, we had French sellers be like, I want to use you guys, but you're not in France. I'm sorry, but now we are. So there's stuff like that. There's also, it's funny. It's not just about what we've done, because it's about what we're about to do. Everything is a new foundation, both on the back end in a very technical sense, but also the design. Every design decision Tasso made was to say, how does this scale? Let's assume we got to add 10x the amount of features here. Does that work? Maybe it doesn't, maybe it doesn't, right? So there's designs we love, but it couldn't scale. So like we have a
Right.
new preferences section. There's only one preference there, but I can tell you 3 ideas of things we want to add. And
Yeah.
so
Yep.
1.0 really is just the new foundation. Yeah, we added a ton of stuff there. Don't get me wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
the roadmap, the list of things we want to add is much larger than what we've done here. And I think we've done a lot here.
Yeah.
So I think that's super important. Even like the inventory lab integration, that used to take 24 to 48 hours for new SKUs for us to be able to pull in costs. It's immediate now. Just
Awesome.
so just everything is just like you take an action and something happened then. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff we want to work on. There's a lot of ideas we have, like even with Maven, the reason why we think it makes sense to have a model instead of, a ton of, AI based strategies is a model can adapt itself. And what's nice is you
Mm-hmm.
can have different versions of a model. So what happens when we start to factor in age of inventory into that model? Maybe it
Right.
increases performance. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. We got to look at the data. And so what's
Yeah.
nice is it's kind of like owning a Tesla, right? You can go to bed, wake up and be like, hey, there's an update. Well, your car just got better and you didn't pay anything. So
Yep.
imagine waking up, coming into Q4 and being like, oh, hey, by the way, you just got an update to your Maven model and it now factors in these things. And by the way, we've seen an increase in 20% performance in some way, shape, or form. Enjoy
Yep.
the updated outcomes. And like, you don't have to do anything. You know what I mean? Like that's insane.
No, it's insane, but it's huge. I mean, anybody, if any seller, or really anytime you're using any type of software as a service, if that company is not constantly looking at ways to improve, if they're not asking for feedback, making them, and wanting to continue to grow, then you might not be at the right place. You might want to go looking around because it's very easy, it's very easy to put something on maintenance mode, right? Build out a
And listen, we had to do it. So like, we're definitely guilty of that ourselves. And it is easy to do that at times. But yeah, I agree. Like you in today's age with how fast technology is moving, it's exponential right now.
Yeah.
And so it's less about like, what have you done today and more like, what are you doing tomorrow, honestly.
Right. And I think it's just cool that you're keeping that focused, and that you guys looked at your product and went, what can we do to make this better? And it sounds like you still are. That's why you guys are calling it 1.0.
Oh, yeah.
This is like you said, this is just the foundation. You're going to be building off of this foundation now, which is already levels above where a lot of your competition is at.
Right.
And so, man, I'm really excited. And so, folks, if you're watching this, if you have a repricer and you heard some things here and went, well, my repricer doesn't do that, maybe you should go check out Aura. If you are in the market for a repricer and you never checked one out before and you're a newer seller, it sounds like this is a great place. They have the AI optimized strategies, going to make things super simple for you. I want to show them your guys' website and where to go before we let them out.
We just released a new version of the site, so good timing.
Perfect. So go to goaura.com, goaura.com. You guys can see it looks just like this. Really slick looking website as well. And guys, check it out. Begin your free trial, 14-day free trial. Dylan, how easy is it for you guys, for somebody to come in, jump into your system and pull in their inventory, set up a strategy? Because, I know that's been a hesitation for us in the past, whenever we're looking at changing softwares okay, we have to adopt something new, right? And that can be painful. So how easy is it to jump into Aura and start using it? And
it's like 3 steps, honestly. And like we're trying to streamline that. So we're designing a better product-led onboarding flow. So the product just tells you do X, Y, and Z. But less than 10 minutes, you can be up and running, honestly. And if you've been doing it for 30 minutes and you're like, I'm kind of struggling, reach out to support. We're actually here to help. Right? Like you could jump in, you can literally hit up support. You can add your marketplace, we'll need SKUs and stuff like that and say, hey, I don't have time to create a strategy. Here's kind of what I'm thinking. And we'll say, great, give me 5 to 10 minutes. I'll go create it for you. And do you want it applied to all your strategies or all your listings and enabled? You go thumbs up. Great. We'll do that for you. And we'll circle back and let you know. So like, we'll do work for you. Like we get it. Yeah. A lot of sellers are busy. A lot of sellers work full time on top of doing this. And so we like to do work for users where they can clarify what they want. Cause like we can do it super fast. We do this day in, day out. So don't feel like you have to come in and learn the ins and outs of strategies. You really don't, to be honest. And if Maven makes a lot of sense for you at that pro tier, awesome, it's even less work, which is even better.
You've always been really generous with your time, but your guys' support is fantastic. And I know that
Thank you.
hey, jump on in. Like we can do an onboarding call with yourself too. You do the onboarding calls, right? And you're in charge of operations.
So it's some of me, some of Finn, kind of depending on what's happening. Like I'm jumping into, I think I have a few tomorrow where users are just like, hey, like I'm just kind of struggling with something. Great. Step into a 15-minute Zoom call. Like I'll help you out, So as whatever we got to do to help you get up and running, we're going to do, if it really is just sending you an article and that solves it, great. Even better. If it's a video, awesome. But if it's like, I need to talk to a human, we can do that for you. Give us some time because we don't do phone support intentionally because of scale. But no, listen, if you're flexible on time and you're like, hey, like, can I jump into a Zoom call the next few days? Like, we'll find a time for you.
We get this. We get with Cheddarsoft, we get a lot of people let us know like they like our support, and honestly, that support came from conversations that I had with you. The chat feature that we have, made things super simple. But like when someone reaches out and they need help, it's like, yep, like let me make you a video for you for this problem, and that, honestly, like. That kind of all stemmed, from conversations with you and how serious you guys took support and still take support. And you have thousands of users that you're working with. So I commend you on that. And I've learned quite a bit from you over our friendship that we've had so far and things that we do. And I like your guys' company. I like how you guys handle things. And so, yes, guys, if you're check it out, goaura.com. Dylan, thank you so much for taking some time with us and just sharing about your guys' new product and all the good stuff that it does. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. It's been a lot of years of just grinding out this new version, so it's awesome to finally be here and to get some positive feedback on what we've been doing. But we're excited to get back public again. Teaching, educating, doing these kind of things. Because the world is changing so fast, and we definitely see that. We want sellers to be ahead of that curve and feel comfortable and confident in what that future looks like and how to operate within it. So I really appreciate you having me come on.
Well, we appreciate having you. All right, guys. Other than that, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. You guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next one.